Hey y'all, we have launched our very own merch on the Letters 2 Media merch store. We have a bunch of good looking t-shirts and hoodies. If you want your own Haddonfield Horror merch, click on the link in the description.
Welcome back to the Haddonfield Horrors Podcast, where we review horror movies and horror movie franchises. I'm Tawan,
I'm Rudy.
I'm Maria.
and Mark is currently out for this recording, but we will be giving his ranking of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. But today, we're not talking about a particular movie. We're actually just going to be ranking them, and we're ranking the movies on the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise from worst to best. So, to get us started off, I'm just going to go ahead and list through Mark's rankings since he won't be able to discuss with us. So, as far as Mark's rankings go, he has number 8, The Nightmare on Elm Street Remake. Number 7, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. Number 6, A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. Number 5, Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. Number 4, A Nightmare on Elm Street, the original. Number 3, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Number 2, A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. And at number 1 spot, Mark has A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. Now that we have Mark's rankings out of the way, we can get the rest of us. So, Rudy, I'm going to toss it to you. What do you have at your number 8 spot for Nightmare on Elm Street?
For the number 8 spot, I have the remake. Um, Obviously, for obvious reasons, I didn't like the movie whatsoever. I wasn't a fan of Freddy's the entire persona. Like the interpretation of Freddy wasn't what I was really expecting from it, and also he was too CGI for my liking. He didn't seem realistic enough or scary enough.
And Maria, what would you say is your ranking number 8 for Nightmare on Elm Street?
For number 8, I have um, Nightmare on Elm Street 5, Dream Child. I don't know. I had a lot of issues with the movie. I feel like it was kind of dumb. The whole child thing going on was weird. Um, and I feel like it was a fever dream more than anything.
For me, at number 8, I have Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. I personally did not really like that movie. I think out of all the ones, it felt the most cheap to me. And um, I just didn't really like the way they went about the story. And also like everything felt like it came together like last minute. It felt really cheap. None of like the characters really made sense. Deaths were nonsensical as well, especially that one that put the one guy inside of the video game. I wasn't really messing with that. So, yeah, the Final Nightmare definitely is probably my lowest ranking one. Moving on to number seven, Rudy. What do you have in your number seven slot?
For my number 7 slot, I have Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5. I was not a fan of this movie whatsoever. Honestly, I can't even say much about it because it's forgettable. This is, well, I'm going to the next one. We'll discuss this. They both kind of like collide. So I have similar explanation to the sixth one, which we'll get into right now. But for number 7, A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5 wasn't good at all. Honestly, I lost myself watching that movie.
And Maria, what do you have in your number seven slot?
For 7, I have Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Um, I thought the movie was ridiculous. It was I was honestly like a really boring movie. Like I was watching it and I couldn't watch. I think halfway I fell asleep, so I ended up watching it was just the kill count. It was just a lot going on in this movie that was so unnecessary, and it was so long for absolutely no reason. And not to mention like the CGI or whatever they were doing in this movie was just awful. So it's number
Mm,
7.
I got you. I'd say my number seven would definitely have to be A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. Um, I really was not much of a fan of this one. The whole thing with like, so I will say like the plot point of like the baby always like dreaming and stuff. I did kind of like that from like a plot point perspective, but everything else, I just like wasn't a fan of, and I just didn't find Alice that interesting of a character for us to follow after number four. So I could have like gone without this one. Plus, the kill count was kind of low for it as well, and yeah, just really wasn't a fan overall with this one. All right, Maria, I'm gonna come back to you for your number six spot.
For number 6, I have Final Nightmare. I agree with what you said. It looked really cheaply made. It was a weird movie. I honestly don't remember the movie, so so it was my number 6 spot.
I got you. And Rudy, what is in your number six spot right now?
My number 6 spot would be A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4. Again, like I said previously, 5 and 4 to me collide. And after 3, I feel like the franchise went downhill and they were just bringing out these movies for cash. And it's like I have too many issues with 4 and 5. Again, 4 is also forgettable, but if I'm not mistaken, this is where they bring back some of the characters from Part 3, right?
That's correct.
And yeah, so the only one that was missing was Kristen, who was played by Patricia Arquette. And I feel like whenever they replace a character with a new cast member, it flops. Like, there's no way I'm gonna connect with this new girl, you know? So had it been Patricia playing Kristen again, maybe I would have liked it more because it would have made sense. But yeah, they could have just not even brought them back if that was the case.
Do you think you would have liked it? So do you think you would have liked it if they brought Kristen back, but like Patricia
As
Arquette as
Patricia.
Kristen, but still killed her?
Yeah, because it's like let's pretend this is a Scream movie and they bring back Sydney Prescott and she's played by someone else who's not Nev Campbell. Like it
Mm,
ruins the whole aesthetic of the movie, the whole purpose of why we're watching it in the first place. So I did get a little connected with Kristen's character played by Patricia. Not only, I mean, I sound biased now, like I sound like I'm just discriminating actresses and all that, but really, when you know an actress like Patricia Arquette, like I do, you want to see more of her. You don't want to see someone play her character. So that's how I feel.
I got you. And I would say for me, my number six spot for Nightmare on Elm Street has to go to the remake. Um, while I really wasn't a fan overall of this remake of the movie, definitely a lot more could have been done with the way that they took it, and also like the story and stuff. And Actually, more on the story, just because they decided to just make Freddy kind of like a full-on child predator, stuff like that, and you know, Freddy, we're supposed to be, it's pretty supposed to be kind of like quirky and in ways that like funny a bit, but like no one's trying to laugh with the child predator. Um, I personally didn't mind the way Freddy looked in this movie. I just felt more could have been done. The acting was should have could have been a little better, especially considering some of the actors that they had. I feel like they did pretty good, and it also feels like the final girl that we got shouldn't have been the final girl. It should have been her friend in the movie. She should have been the final girl as opposed to the Nancy that we got this time around. So the remake is my sixth. Now, moving on to number five ranking. Rudy, what would you say is your number five for Nightmare on Elm Street?
Yeah, so number five, I have to go for Freddy's Dead. I know you guys might like go against me for this, but I really actually enjoyed this movie, and it was one of the favorite ones to watch when I was younger. Again, going back to the video game scene, that drew me onto the television, and I was like super fascinated by that scene for whatever reason. Now looking at it as an adult, it's corny, and the effects are not that great. But we're using like televisions that are like super advanced nowadays, where everything does look cheaper. Back in the day, our televisions were not that great, so like everything looked cool, if that makes sense. And for this particular movie, especially with it being like 3D at the time, or they had like a 3D version or something,
Hmm.
it was pretty dope to watch. And I like the storyline. They, I don't like the fact that they made her into like what, the daughter? Who is she? The main character, like the long lost
Yeah,
a
it was
relative.
weird.
Yeah, that I wasn't a fan of because I feel like Hollywood does that a lot. They bring back like people from their past, and it's just sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And for this movie, it didn't work. But either way, regardless, I like it. So
Yeah.
that's why I choose it as number five.
All right, Maria, what would you say is your number five for Nightmare on Elm Street?
For number five, I have Dream Master. um, it wasn't like a horrible movie. It wasn't great, but I guess like because it was part of the Dream trilogy, like like it was a running storyline. It made sense. The acting wasn't great, but I mean, other than that, I honestly, it's like a lesser evil than the other movies, and I think that's the only reason I have it at number five.
That's true. Well, piggybacking off of you, I also have Nightmare on Elm Street 4: The Dream Master as my number five slot. Agreeing with you that like it's not the worst out of the bunch. I do think out of the whole Dream trilogy, I think the Dream Child is the worst of the three, and this one is definitely like that middle ground. It it started off. Like when I first watched it, started off when giving leading you to believe that you're gonna deal with the new story with the cast with the rest of the survivors that we have from the old one. But it was our last time going off with them, and then we get like Alice as like our lead from now on. Which I don't know. I just didn't. Alice never really gave me that same energy that I got from like Kristen for like Patricia Arquette specifically in the previous movie, Dream Warriors, and I don't know. She just wasn't like that strong of me to like lead once Kristen's character died. So that I wasn't really a fan of. But the kills and stuff were still good. I did like that scene where he killed like Sheila with like with asthma, or the one with like the Roach Motel. That one was crazy actually. I will say this did give one of the more worst kills in regards to the character that Freddy killed in like the martial arts dojo, which he was like invisible because they ran out of like budget or whatever. So that I didn't like. But yeah, my number five would be number four. Well, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. Moving on to our number four slot though. Maria, I'll toss it back to you. What do you have in your number four slot?
For number four, I have Nightmare 2. Freddy's Revenge. Um, I mean, it wasn't. Again, I feel like it's better than the other movies, even though the other movies were a little bit more cohesive. This one was a little different. They tried. Um, I guess. It was an interesting concept that they had going on. But I mean, it was a weird movie. I'm glad that they never went back to it. Um, but I also feel like it was different. You know, I feel like it was different. I mean, if it was a standalone, I feel like it would have been great. And if they worked on it a little bit better instead of trying to stay within that Freddy universe, I feel like it would have been great. Um, but yeah, that's why it's my number four.
You know what's funny about um, Part Two or Nightmare on Elm Street Two is I feel like if they reworked the story a bit to take out it's like stuff that would be considered problematic now, I feel like that one will work better as a remake than the OG one. I don't know. In
Yeah,
my, I feel like it will work. I feel like it will work better just because the gay subtext and everything that it has. I feel like it will work better now.
yeah. I just feel like if I feel like it would have worked as like just like its own movie without being like having to rely on Freddy
Yeah,
so much. It would have worked
that's
out.
true.
Honestly, I'm all here for the scene. Like I don't. It had some scenes where I was like, okay, but but in the end, it did flop. But I see its
Facts.
potential.
All right, Rudy, what do you have in your number four slot?
Yeah, so for number four, I also have A Nightmare on Elm Street Part Two. Um, it wasn't the best movie, but it was definitely different than the previous one. Let's just be honest. This was like a straight sequel to the original first one. So I feel like they wanted to change it up and put in like a main male character this time. And although this is a controversial topic, but like there was a lot of gay subtext, like you said, Tawan. And I like the fact that they didn't shove it in our face. Like it was kind of hinted at us, but it wasn't like how they would do it nowadays, like you mentioned. It would have worked out now, but let's be honest, if someone else made this movie again, it would have been like super gay compared to how it was in the original second part. So I like it. Like keep it subtle. You don't have to show it in everyone's faces. Like be extreme about the scenes and whatnot. So I like it, and I like the storyline. It still was a little. It was giving dark vibes. Um, I think up until like part three, and then again after that, it just went downhill. But yeah, I like it.
My number four slot is Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Um, I I liked New Nightmare, just for like the way that it went, and also like I'm a Scream fanboy, and this is like our precursor to like that meta kind of way that Wes Craven was kind of going with his career. It's been because like after this he did Scream, and you could see kind of like the mini building blocks of that, and just in general, I
Hmm.
like the idea of bringing something out of like it being like something like out of a book or a movie, and then it coming into like the real world in that universe. Like I like that whole type of story beat, so it worked for me with this one. um I will admit it could have been like a little better put together, and I would say better acting, but since we're going off the universe of the movie, and it's not like Heather Langenkamp wasn't in the movie. It really wouldn't have worked with anyone else if we're just, casting Nancy. So we got what we got with that. But um, I did like this movie for what it was, and it was the building blocks of, stuff that we got in the future. So I'm okay with that. But moving on to our number three spot, Rudy, what do you have in number three?
So for my number three spot, it's obviously A Nightmare on Elm Street Part Three. I feel like this one hit the spot for me during that time when I was a kid and I was watching these movies back and forth, or back to back. I mean, um, just the whole '80s vibes from this movie gets me every time because I'm obsessed with the '80s style for whatever reason, punk rock scene, all that. So, and I think I did mention this when we discussed this movie, but that particular scene. forgive me if I don't know their names, but that one girl who's dressed, she has like her mohawk and she's walking through this like super sketchy New York-esque alley. That scene was always my favorite scene of the movie. I don't know why, I just like the vibe. Um, what else can I say about this one? Well, obviously Kristen was in it, and Patricia's always giving me. I don't think she's a great actress, but she's campy. So she gave it that little spark that we needed for that movie. And then Nancy was brought back. That was always a plus. Yeah, overall, I like the movie. It deserves a number 3 spot in my opinion.
Maria, what do you have in your number 3 spot?
My number three is the remake. um, I mean, they did copy a lot from the original, but I mean, it was gory. It had its moments. I, to be honest, I think it was the first ever Elm Street that I like ever watched. Even like as a kid. And I mean, there were some things bad about the movie, but I feel like out of the other movies, I think I enjoyed it the most. I mean, I didn't enjoy it the most, but I didn't mind watching it, I guess. I wasn't bored. I wasn't thinking, what the fuck is going on, like 10 times. I mean, the acting wasn't great. I mean, it was. I'm like, I'm not gonna sit here and like defend the movie because I know it's bad, but like it like scratches a really like a certain part of my brain. I guess it's like it's like a guilty pleasure, you know? Like I'm like, okay, like I don't mind watching it for like just some scenes, not
No,
everything
I get what
though.
you mean.
Like so it made my number 3 spot.
No, I get what you mean. Me, I have A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. Um, I will say, like, I don't think that this was, like, better than the original. Um, but, like, as, like, a follow-up, it gave us something different as opposed to the exact same that we got with the first one. And also, like, a different perspective, given like a male perspective instead of female this time around, um, which was fine and worked. Not gonna say that the acting was much better in this version of the movie compared to what we got in the first one. They're both about on the same like level, but kind of like with Maria with the remake, this one I would say is more like guilty pleasure kind of. Um, And I personally think I would keep this one at the slot avenue. Yeah. So number 3, number Elm Street 2. Moving on from me though, Rudy, what do you have in your number 2 slot?
So for number 2, I'm gonna choose New Nightmare because I like the fact that Wes Craven took it to a different direction and didn't stick to the original storyline. He pretty much used Heather, Robert, and himself in the movie. And to me, I interpret the movie as they were cursed by making A Nightmare on Elm Street. So they were being haunted by the actual fictional character and was brought back to reality. And it was more like a psychological thing for me. Like, it's like Heather was dealing with like some kind of mental breakdown, and she was being haunted by the character that was actually killing her in her movies.
All right, Maria, let's go over to you. What do you have in your number 2 slot?
For number 2, I have the first Nightmare on Elm Street. It's an original, and it's really not a bad original movie. Like it was pretty good. I know Nancy had her her acting issues, but it was fine. Johnny Depp saved her from that. Um,
I'm dead.
and I mean, but other than that, I mean, I think it's like generally a good movie, even though it's such like an old movie. I feel like even today, like a lot of people would enjoy it. I know I definitely
Hmm.
enjoyed it. It was also I think it was, this time around was my first time watching it too, and I was and I liked it. Like I was actually paying attention. It wasn't just like I'm gonna watch it just because it's a classic, but it's also because it's an actual good movie.
And I would say also for me, my number two is the original Nightmare on Elm Street as well. Basis for the whole franchise. It gave us Freddy and like this idea of being haunted in your dreams and stuff. And yeah, like Maria said, like it's not like a bad movie. It's definitely I would say like it's definitely aged pretty well. Um, and especially like effects wise, like that kill with Glenn with the whole like rooms like bursting with like blood and stuff like that is always like a crazy kill to me. And the way they pulled that off was like really cool. And
Mm.
the design of Freddy like looked good in this one, and it came
Yeah.
with an idea. And even though you know like as the series got on, like Freddy got very corny, um, he still popped like a quip here and there in this one, but it wasn't like annoying. Like it was that good like middle ground of like usually in horror movies they kind of cut it with like just a smidge of comedy to like cut it at least a little bit, which it worked like really good here with the way that he quipped, and I like that. So yeah, in my number two, I have the original Nightmare on Elm Street. But now we are getting to our number ones. So Maria, what do you have in your number one slot for Nightmare on Elm Street? I feel like everyone has the same thing.
For number one, I have Dream Warriors.
Okay, Rudy is Dream Warriors your number one.
No.
What? Okay, keep going. Keep going, Maria.
um, I mean, it was a good movie. Like, I think this was also a good movie. Like, the first movie was really good. The second one was like, it didn't match up. But like, I feel like the third movie, if it was a like, if that movie had came out, I feel like it would have been even better. But it was a really good movie. I really enjoyed it. It had really good practical effects. I feel, um, it
Mm,
wasn't like I feel like nobody in the movie was being dumb. And I also feel like like a lot of franchises, they tend to have that movie where everybody's in a mental hospital, and I feel like sometimes those movies aren't like made well, but I feel like this time it was made really well. Nobody was being dumb. A lot of characters in this movie were pretty smart. I mean, but Kristen and Nancy were like something else. But you know what I mean? Like everybody else kind of made up for it. I thought it was a really interesting movie, and I liked the vibes. I liked what it was going for. Um, I liked that this was the turning point where Freddy starts to get kind of funny, but he also wasn't doing too much in the movie. I feel like this is also a movie that I would probably rewatch because I thought it was good.
all right. And Rudy,
Yeah.
what do you have in your number one slot?
So, last but not least, for my number one spot is obviously the original, one and only, A Nightmare on Elm Street. I can't say how much I love this movie, and it inspired me to love horror movies. Moving forward, after I watched it, I loved everything about it. The atmosphere. Freddy Krueger was super fucking scary when I was younger, and he still creeps me out if I start watching that specific movie for whatever reason. His makeup effects were on point. His demeanor, he was just so creepy and like I don't know. I love the fact that they made him dark to scare the audience. And the music doesn't help because it's just so creepy, especially in the introduction at the boiler room. That scene always gets me. Um, what else can I say? I want to keep it fast. Uh, Heather playing Nancy was kind of corny because her acting was never great, but it actually fit well with teenagers back in the day. Like if you think about it, teenagers are not gonna act serious and like super Oscar worthy with their performance. Like they're gonna act the way that Nancy acted or Heather acted out. So it made it realistic. Well, Heather was portraying Nancy as how a teenager would normally act anyway. I mean, she was kind of on the corny side, and she was just like this like gullible, clueless teenage girl who didn't know what to do until she figured it out at the end, and found ways to like defeat Freddy. But it all worked out, and I love this movie so much, and it definitely paved the way for a lot of horror movies that came after it. And Freddy, in my opinion, Freddy's always going to be the ultimate horror icon. Like, there's no doubt about it.
And for me, I will say in my number one slot that I'm with Maria, and I have Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. Um, Dream Warriors is definitely like definitely the peak apex of this franchise. They took their concept that they had and like cranked it up like to like 10, but did it really well for what the franchise was and what it could be. And they just got like really creative with it. Like the story was creative, and also the way they went about like the kills and stuff was creative. Like that marionette kill, that shit was always crazy to me. Using like the veins or like the veins of like the arms as like the marionette strings, or the the kill with the TV is prime time, bitch. Like I'm sorry, you can't. That will forever be funny to me. But yeah, that will like forever be funny to me, and I will always enjoy that movie. And like Maria said, yeah, out of all of them, I think like that this one is the one I would like go back to rewatch the most out of all the other movies. And yeah, I think that's why it's my number one slot for sure. But doing something a bit new, we're going to do a cash or pass on the franchise of Nightmare on Elm Street. Since Mark isn't with us, I will read off Mark's cash or pass. So, for the franchise of Nightmare on Elm Street, Mark says he will cash based on parts 1, 3, 4, and 5. He says those three movies, or those four movies, are what the Nightmare franchise are, and he'll cash it just so people can watch those four movies. Now, Maria, do you cash or pass the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise?
Like, I want to say cash, but it's only because of like 2 to 3 movies in the whole franchise. Like I strongly feel like the first movie is really really good, especially for a classic, especially compared to like other classics. But like I don't ever see myself completing the whole series again. I feel like if somebody were to say, let's binge it, and I'll be like, okay, fine. Like let's do it. I feel like I'd stay up for the first 3 movies, and then I'll probably like fall asleep after that. So
That's
I
fair.
like I want to say cash, but I genuinely just don't feel I feel like I'd be like, let's watch the first 3 movies, and then like we're good. Like after that, like we're fine. I mean, you can continue. Somebody else can continue watching it. I feel very strongly about like the first one and the third one, that I want to say
Mhm.
cash, but I also know that personally, like if somebody were to honestly sit me down and be like, let's watch the whole series, I see myself falling asleep after the third movie. Like I don't see myself staying up after that.
I get you. All right. So, Rudy, do you cash or pass the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise?
So I definitely cast the entire franchise, regardless of my least favorites. They all are one, and with like, Marcus couldn't have said it any better. Like, without this movie, it wouldn't be any Nightmare. Honestly, none of these movies. It all makes it to be what it is today, which is why it's so popular, even within the new generation. And I really hope that they make more movies like these classics that are hopefully never to be forgotten.
All right. And I would say for me, I will have to cash the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Only reason I'm cashing this franchise, besides part three, is Freddy vs. Jason. Without this series, I wouldn't have got Freddy vs. Jason. I don't know what it is about that movie. I love that movie. It's so bad. It's corny, but it's so good that I love it. It's one of those. Um, but besides that, like this franchise gave us like a really good horror movie icon with Freddy, and um, that can't be like taken away. And but I will agree with Maria that I definitely don't see myself going back to watch like this whole franchise. If I was to go back, I probably would just watch like part three and maybe New Nightmare from time to time. But besides that, I will give it a cash just off of the strength of like the character Freddy, the idea that it brought, and also just the future. Because like put in the right hands, I could see this franchise working really well for now if they put it in the right hands. But it just hasn't been done yet. That remake was like a testament to that. But given the right hands, we can definitely get like a good Nightmare on Elm Street movie. So with that, I will give a cash on it. But
Nice.
I will say that wraps up our short stint on Nightmare on Elm Street. And with that, tune in next week as we will review Freddy vs. Jason. Goodbye and good night.
The Haddonfield Horrors podcast is a Letters to Media production.
Should we do an intro?